All right, welcome. Excuse me. My name is Austin. I'm a part of the team here at Waypoint. Hello. Good morning. Glad you're joining us today. If you're new here, welcome. Welcome. We hope today community is renewing and refreshing for you and your family. I've just got a couple things to put before all of you before I dive in. First, we have a series coming up. And we'd love for there to be some community that forms out of this series. So we're inviting you to join some series groups. We've got a handful of groups to sign up for. So I would just encourage you, if you're looking for a way to engage, to dive a little bit deeper, dig into the message of the series in community with each other, I would encourage you, check out one of these groups. Okay? Also, we are having a men's breakfast coming up. So put this in your calendar, gentlemen. October 4th. Best meal of the day, right? Best meal of the day. I love it. I just think men love breakfast. I think there's just something about breakfast food. Like steak and eggs. I don't think we're having steak and eggs, I'm sorry. But that would be great. Anyway, join us for that. Put that on your calendar. Lastly, today after the service, we are going to be dedicating the space, that build that you see happening on the other side of the building. And so what we're going to do is after this service, we're just inviting all of you. We're going to go to that space and take an opportunity just to bless it with words, with prayers. And so, yeah, we hope you join us to that. We're really hoping that is a space for our community to bless God's kingdom and his work here on earth as it is in heaven. So I would like to start off this morning by diving into the scriptures, by diving into this verse that I think is just kind of grounding and rooting us in this series that we're calling Yoked. And so if you've got your Bibles, great. If you've got the Bible app on your phone, fantastic. You can follow along there. I'll also have the verse behind me on the screen. But if you would, go with me to Matthew 11, verses 28 through 30. And we're just going to start here together this morning as we kind of ground ourselves and root ourselves in his word. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." Last week, Chris started this series called Yoked, which is not referring to the yellow part of an egg, the good part, or getting shredded at the gym, but a farming instrument used to join two animals in order to share a load and pull together. Jesus uses this idea as a way to describe life with him, discipleship under him. In other words, when we are yoked to Jesus, not only are we required to go the same direction as him, but he also bears the load. Whatever weight we are carrying is shared with him. And I've got an image just to you can kind of see it in the background, but I thought this was just a great image to describe what we mean when we're talking about being yoked. It's this idea. It's a beautiful metaphor for what life with Jesus and discipleship to Jesus looks like. Not just a teacher who will show us the way, but our Savior who bears our burdens and whose work we cling to in faith with hope. Last week, Chris invited us to consider what we are yoked to. What we are yoked to. This week, I want to focus on where being yoked to Jesus will lead us. But first, I need to tell you about a plane ride. This past week, my family, my wife Morgan, and my family and I, so I've got two daughters, ages 4 and 2, we got on a plane and headed to Seattle. So that's about a 4-hour flight with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I didn't know this. Our flight was at 11. I didn't know that that's still technically a morning flight. I had no clue. I don't fly very often. So anyway, we're on the flight, and like we're getting set, and everything's happening, and we flew Southwest, so you kind of like pick your seats, right? And so we ended up having to go all the way to the back, which was fine. I'm like, you know what? The less people we can bother back here, that's totally okay with us. So anyway, we actually ended up getting like two rows to the four of us back there. So that was kind of great, kind of a perk of heading all the way to the back. Anyway, Ophelia, my oldest, my 4-year-old, has been on a flight before. This isn't her first time, but I'm not sure if maybe this was the first time like that it actually hit her. So we're the only ones, by the way, with like our windows open. Like again, 11 o'clock flight. Like apparently everyone's like windows down. Like they get seated and they pretty much put the headphones in, put like their little like eye wraps on. Like they're like done. They're toast. Or they've got their iPad out and they're already like watching a movie, which I didn't think was allowed. Like I totally thought you had to wait until you're up in the air. Guess not. I don't know. I guess I don't really care. Anyway, so we told our daughters, like, we're not going to bring out any of the technology until we're in the air. Okay? And like, Ophi's like, Dad, but this kid in front of me has her iPad out and she's already watching Bluey. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, you know what? It's fine. We're just going to wait till we're up in the air. I don't know. They do things differently than we do. That's okay. So we're like, as soon as the plane starts moving, like I look over and it's Ophelia in the window seat, and we're like in one of those seats that have both windows, so she's got both of them open. Light is just blaring in. I'm sure all of those people who think 11 o'clock's a morning flight is just like very much disliking us. But anyway, the plane starts to move, and she like does this little squeal, like it's like 4-year-old squeal over at me, and like, oh, Ophelia. Just wait for it. And so we get all set up, and the engines start to rumble, and I can't help. Like I am just so laser focused on her and her experience, and it's crazy because I took a second to kind of just look at everyone else around us, and like the row in front of us is sleeping already, the people behind us are just honed in, and like to my left is just my 4-year-old daughter, just enthralled with what's happening out the window. The engine starts rumbling, and we take off. And she's just giddy with excitement. She is losing her mind at how fast we are going. And then all of a sudden, you know that moment when like the plane like starts to lift, and your stomach kind of drops out from underneath you? She goes, sorry, if you want to, she just goes, woo! She freaks out. She totally has this like moment, and she's just giggling. Like she is like, it's not just giggling. Like it is full out like just pure joy, screaming, laughing. And like Morgan in the aisle next to me is like, Austin, like please, like get her to stop. And I'm just like, why do I need to stop this? Like we are literally flying through the air right now. If anyone actually took a second to think about how incredible this is, like it is absolutely amazing. It's a miracle that we are literally in a vehicle flying through the air. And my daughter gets it. She's like, we're flying! Oh my goodness! And like this is like honestly for like 5 minutes straight. And everyone, like at first people were kind of like turning and looking because I could hear over their noise canceling headphones because that's how loud Ophelia was. And like, we get up to the point where like we're breaching clouds, and we're entering into the clouds, and she just has another moment. We're like, we're flying through clouds, like just everything to her in the moment was just surreal, unbelievable, and like it was one of those moments where like for me, I have flown before. Like, yeah, it's kind of. You still get like, oh yeah, we're taking off. Okay, there's still kind of that moment. But I'm just watching her and just the pure joy and wonder. I couldn't help but, for those of you that have seen me teach or preach, like I'm a softie. I'll probably say that every time. But the case is true as a father, and I like just start to kind of like well up with tears because I'm like looking around at everyone else, and I'm like, you guys are missing it. This is so cool. This is so amazing and incredible. And most of the time, and now we're to the point, right, where most of us has flown multiple times in our lives. Like, yeah, the first thing we do is like pull out our downloaded video and just start watching that. And like, I'm convinced that we just don't remember, we're not as enthralled by things because we're so used to it. We're so used to everything else. We're so used to entertainment, just constant entertainment. I'm convinced that boredom doesn't exist anymore. We're so like we can't even spend a minute in just sitting in the seat and being bored to wait for the plane to take off. Wait to see the clouds. Wait to see the sun over the clouds shining down. Like I'm old enough to remember what it was like to fly on a plane and only have a magazine and the airplane safety pamphlets. Right? Until I got a Game Boy. Then things changed. But even then, if you forgot batteries, you were toast. Your Game Boy would probably die mid-flight, and you didn't have in-flight entertainment back then, so all you had was just looking at the safety pamphlets or looking out the window somewhere over in Nebraska. Right? That's what it was. Now, I don't know where I would be without technology today, mostly because I'm utterly reliant on Apple Maps to get me anywhere new. But before the entertainment and technology, all of these moments of boredom, of quiet, so to speak, were potential portals to God, to wonder, to joy, to fascination, to creation, to noticing and observing the world around us, the people around us, God around us, looking out the window, completely enthralled by clouds and the sun in the sky and the fact that we're flying through the sky. But now we have 24/7 access to constant stimulation, constant noise. Noise. Do you guys know that 77% of people reach for their phone when nothing is occupying their attention? I'm looking at you with your phones in your hands right now. 77% of people reach for their phones when nothing is occupying their attention. There is a new neurological disorder called phantom vibration syndrome. And most of you know what I'm talking about without me even having to describe it. You know what I'm talking about, right? It is, for those of you that don't know, this has happened to me before. It is when your phone's in your pocket and you feel a buzz and you look at it thinking you got like a call or a text and it's nothing, but you like, I thought for sure I had a buzz. Now you know it's just your brain's addiction to your phone, telling your body to look at it. It's a syndrome. It is real, phantom vibration syndrome. And I think the greatest threat to all of this noise, of all of this noise, isn't the loss of boredom or quiet or what's generated there, right? Wonder, joy, fascination, creation. Although that is a serious concern, I think the greatest threat is that it is robbing us of the ability to be present to the reality of the moment. Flying through the clouds. Present to the moment in front of us. Present to the person in front of us. How many of you has that happened before? You're trying to have a conversation with someone and they're just, right? Present to the world and reality around us. Present to our own lives, our own souls. Most importantly, present to God. How can we have any semblance of a spiritual life if we are too busy and distracted to be present with God? There's a reporter by the name of Andrew Sullivan. He wrote this. He said, "The reason we live in a culture increasingly without faith is not because science has somehow disproved the unprovable, but because the white noise of secularism has removed the very stillness in which it might endure or be reborn." He goes on to say, if the churches came to understand that the greatest threat to faith today is not hedonism, but distraction, perhaps they might begin to appeal anew to a frazzled digital generation. Christian leaders seem to think that they need more distraction to counter distraction. Their services have degenerated into emotional spasms. Their spaces drowned with light and noise and locked shut throughout the day when their darkness and silence might actually draw those whose minds and souls have grown web-weary. Web-weary or just weary, the invitation is still there from Matthew 11. Come to me, and I will give you rest. What does it look like to be yoked to Jesus in this world of noise? Constant noise and distraction. Luke chapter 5, verses 15 through 16. This is after Jesus has healed and his ministry is on the move. News began to spread about him all the more, so that the crowds of people came to him and be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Notice how, and this isn't, you can find this throughout the Gospel of Luke, but notice how Luke writes, Jesus often withdrew. In Luke's Gospel alone, we read Jesus doing this 9 times. This wasn't just a one-time thing after Jesus and his ministry got really busy. This was clearly a part of how Jesus lived his life. He often withdrew to the lonely, quiet, private places to pray. And also, if I have to guess, just rest. Rest in the presence and power of God, who is the source of all life and energy. And while I am just guessing, you can arguably chart the frequency that the more busy and in demand Jesus became, the more he would slip away from the noise, as I think, to just process with God and rest and be rejuvenated by his presence. As Jesus' life grew busier, the more he sought out silence, the quiet solitude. Most of us go the complete opposite direction. The more busy we are, the more demands that are put on us, the more responsibilities we have, the more stressed and out of control we feel, the less time we spend in quiet places. In fact, I would argue that most of us move towards more noise. We self-soothe by scrolling or binge watching, anything that will distract us from the reality of our lives, from the reality around us. And what we don't realize is that this is exactly what the powers at play in the world want for us. Richard J. Foster, in his book Celebration of Discipline, writes this: in contemporary society, our adversary, the devil, majors in 3 things: noise, hurry, and crowds. Noise, hurry, and crowds. If he can keep us engaged in muchness and manyness, he will rest satisfied. C.S. Lewis writes in his book, The Screwtape Letters, which is a fascinating work of fiction about the devil's work in the world from the perspective of a senior demon who writes letters to an apprentice demon. He writes this: music and silence, how I detest them both. We will make the whole universe a noise in the end. We have already made great strides in this direction as regards the earth. The melodies and silences of heaven will be shouted down in the end. But I admit we are not yet loud enough or anything like it. Research is in progress. This was written many years ago. I would argue it has only gotten louder. Like it or not, noise is a weapon used against us. And noise has never been louder due to the devices in our pockets, demanding our attention, distracting us from being present to God in the ways that God is trying to move, speak, and work around you and within you, which is why it is imperative that we do not resist withdrawing to the quiet places as Jesus did. Because if you are yoked to Jesus, he is going to take you to the quiet places. He is going to lead you to the quiet places. And yet, I think we resist. And to some of you, that sounds crazy. Why would I resist the quiet? What I would give for some peace and quiet in my home, in my life. Who would resist that? As crazy as it sounds, a lot of people do. And many of us, even when we have moments that we could dedicate to the quiet, we fill it. Either with more busyness or more noise. Why? Because we have become addicted to stimulation and hurry. There's always something to do, right? There's always something to do, always something to get done. If it's not work, housework, practice, homework, there's always a hot news take out there. There's always a new YouTube video, a post on Instagram, Facebook drama, another Netflix series, Apple TV series, Apple Prime series, Disney Plus series, Peacock series. You get the point? We resist the quiet without even noticing it because we have been yoked to the way of the world, the way of distraction. To crave stimulation. To the point where we will reach for our phone just standing in line. That's the first thing we do when we're bored. We don't know how to be bored anymore. Whatever can get us another dopamine hit from wherever we can get it. We've forgotten how to be bored because we're used to being distracted. But if we can fight through the boredom and distraction, here is where the quiet really gets hard. I think the real reason so many of us resist the quiet is because we resist the reality. We resist reality. We're afraid that we might have to deal with that thing, that person, that issue, that struggle, if we're quiet for long enough. That if we're quiet for long enough, something might surface that's uncomfortable, that makes us feel uneasy about our relationships, about our marriage, about our brokenness, about our sin. And this is precisely why we must not resist the quiet. We cannot resist the reality. Here's why. But first I want to go to 1 Kings. There is this moment in the life of the prophet Elijah where he flees to the wilderness because he's being hunted and he believes that he is all alone. And so he gets to this point where he reaches the mountain, Mount Horeb. And we read this, 1 Kings 19, 11 through 12. Go out and stand before me on the mountain, the Lord told him. And as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was a sound, a gentle whisper. It wasn't in all of the noise of the windstorm, the earthquake, the roaring fire where where Elijah heard God's voice, but in the still quiet. When he heard the sound of a gentle whisper or a still small voice that spoke to him. That spoke truth into his reality. That is why we cannot resist facing our reality, because God wants to speak truth into it. If you read on, it is in the quiet where God gives Elijah direction. It reminds him that he is not alone. In fact, far from it, he was never alone. Noise will keep us in a false sense of reality. It'll keep us distracted from dealing with the reality that we must deal with, that God must get a hold of in order for him to work in our lives. Noise will keep us at the center of our lives. Noise will make us the victim. Noise will convince us that we are all alone. Noise will make them the sinner. Noise will make them the enemy. Noise will keep us astray and rip us from the yoke of Jesus. If we are yoked to Jesus, he is going to lead us out of the noise and into the quiet, but we must be able and willing to go there. We cannot resist it. We cannot be distracted from it. We must make time for quiet and face, not fear. For God's love casts out all fear. We must face our present reality in his presence. Because that is where God is going to speak. Friends, God can handle your present situation. God can handle your sin. God can handle your brokenness. God knows about your struggles, your anxiety, stress, OCD, anger, rage, addiction, selfishness, bitterness. God knows everything about you and your life, and he offers you his hand. And Jesus sees you and he invites you, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle. And you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. Band, you guys can make your way up on stage. This week, there's been a lot of noise. And I have to admit, it was really challenging. This topic was picked long before this past week. Really challenging writing about this past week for so many reasons. And someone reminded me that perhaps it was because you were talking about noise that it was so noisy. It was a good reminder for me to set aside time. Set aside time in my to-do list. Being a husband, being a father, being a coworker, a coach. We're all busy. But to set aside time to rest, to hear God speak into my life so I can be the best father and husband that I can be, the best coworker that I can be, the best follower of Christ, yoked to him. So let me ask you, will you set aside some time this week to find a quiet place? Even if it's just 10 minutes, start somewhere, put your phone elsewhere. Do your best to get rid of all noise. Go outside, find a quiet room. Jesus would go early in the morning or late at night. Wherever you can, make time for it. And the enemy will make this hard. But the noise isn't going away. Again, this week is a testament to that. So we must find time to be quiet like Jesus did. Friends, it's how Jesus began his ministry, by going out into the quiet of the desert. It's how he made important decisions. It's how he dealt with troubling emotions like grief. It's how he dealt with the constant demands of his ministry and how he cared for his soul. It's how he taught his disciples. It's how he prepared for important ministry events. It's how he prepared for even his own death on the cross. And if Jesus, arguably the busiest human being on all of that has ever walked the earth, can make time for quiet, surely you can too. And arguably, it's one of the most important things you can do. In the quiet this week, Listen for his voice. Let him teach you. Let him remind you that he is good. He is bigger than anything you're facing. He is still in control. Let him remind you that you are not alone and he is with you and you are loved. I'm going to pray for us. Jesus, this week has been a tough one. And Lord, I know you know that. But we acknowledge that in this moment. But God, we also acknowledge your goodness. We recognize your commitment to us. God, thank you for not forsaking us. Jesus, I ask, as many of us will commit to finding a quiet place this week, God, I ask that you would speak. Jesus, I pray that it would be your words that shape our reality. God, you are reality. You're as real as it gets. May it be you that transforms our minds, as Chris referred to earlier in the service. May it be your voice that guides us and leads us through difficult, traumatic times and circumstances, not just in the world, but in our daily lives, in our relationships. May we find the quiet place to be a beautiful moment where we hear your voice, we're reminded of your love, and we are ready to go be sent out into the world for your kingdom. But God, I believe it has to come from a place of quietness. So please, Jesus, speak to us in the quiet. We love you and we praise you, Lord. It's in your name.